Justin's wrong, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you for being up every day, or thank you for making this your first listen. Really do appreciate you. My name's Ryan Herrings. We got that good-looking man over there, Justin Jolka. Go check him out on the Bucket Report, him and Rajiv, obviously. Today's episode, listen, we're going to talk some optimism levels. It's a call-in show, so we've done this before. I'm trying to bring this back. So if anybody wants to call in, jump on the show, give us your optimism level. The link is in the chat. But we also just have a bunch of stuff we're going to get back and forth on. Justin and I disagree on something. A couple things probably we're going to get into that. And if you have any questions that you want us to talk about, throw those in the chat as well. This is just kind of a fun community show. I do want to start here, though, because I think this is super important. I have already mentioned it, but today is Memorial Day. And I love this quote here. It's from Rochelle Goodrich. On this day, take time to remember those that have fallen. But on every day after, do more. Put the freedoms they died for to greater and nobler uses. This is a great country. I mean, listen, this is just me speaking, but remember those who have fallen. It is Memorial Day, and yeah, it's a special day for sure. Let's get in from that. We already got Jay in Toronto jumping in. Jay, just make sure your camera's on. I want to start off with where I think Justin and I disagree with. So we've gone back and forth on the Michigan game. I think Michigan's going to beat us by like 10 to 14 points. You and I have talked about it. You called it like a 60-40 game where maybe they win 60% of the time. It just feels unnecessarily optimistic given where our program's been. Tell me why you think I'm wrong here.
For me, it's not really anything about us. It's about the fact that I think that Michigan is not in a great place this year. Last year there were people pumping them up as a 9 or 10 win team and a potential playoff team. And I said last year, I'm like, I don't see it. Like, the coaching staff had a ton of upheaval. They lost their strength and conditioning guy. They lost so many things that make you wonder, how do you balance that out and get everyone on the same page? And I look at Michigan and I see a true freshman quarterback who's the only guy really in play right now, it feels like. I see a bunch of defensive talent, and people will sit there and be like, well, they beat Ohio State. They beat, Alabama. And I look at it and I'm like, well, yeah. And the interior of their defensive line got completely gutted by the draft. You lost a lockdown cornerback. I'm not saying they don't have talent that's in there, but we also don't know if the staff that's currently there is capable of developing the talent that's in there to the same degree that Harbaugh's staff did. And I don't believe that the strength conditioning staff is going to be as good as what I could only call possibly a top 3 guy in all of college football, and Ben Herbert. He's in the NFL now for a reason. But yeah, I just don't feel like I think people are giving them the benefit of the doubt because their name is Michigan. I think if you threw out the stuff that we're looking at with any other team, people would be saying, I mean, we don't know what the offense is going to be. You have a guy with no experience. You have receivers who are pretty mediocre. The best pass catcher is in the NFL now. He got drafted. And I kind of look at it like, who are they leaning on? I think the goal for them has got to be to lean on the running game. But even some of the pieces on the offensive line they lost. So it's really a question of, are they capable of reloading? And maybe they are. But even Harbaugh for a long time wasn't always capable of reloading. So
it's true, but I would point out, and then I want to get to Jay in Toronto and then Jacob's in the chat. Again, if you guys want to jump in, take that link, jump in, give us your confidence levels, whatever you want to talk about. But I think my biggest pushback to that is, and I don't want to take too much time on this, even though I started on this one. This is my fault because I do want to get to people calling in, but they can just reload at a higher level because they recruit better. They hit the portal better. We talked about that freshman quarterback. He's a freshman quarterback, but he's a freshman quarterback that cost $12 million. I mean, that if Wisconsin had that guy, I think we'd be super excited for it.
See, I disagree.
And it's in Ann Arbor. It's in Ann Arbor. It's like,
I will give you that. That's definitely a factor in this. But I just don't think there is zero quarterbacks that come in other than a guy by the name of Trevor Lawrence, who's the one outlier as a true freshman quarterback to come in, who did not start from day one, mind you, that was played at a high level, and he was on an offense that was littered with NFL players. He had 2 NFL wide receivers. He had an NFL running back. He had a really good offensive line. It was a stacked offense. That is not what he's walking into at Michigan. And he hasn't looked great in the spring game. So I'm not saying he can't be good. I'm saying that historically we've seen that you cannot rely on a true freshman quarterback, no matter how good they are, to be elite right off the bat or even good.
It's possible. I think you're crazy, though. Let's bring in Jay from Toronto. He was first in the chat. Again, if anybody wants to jump in. Tell us if you agree with me or Justin or whatever you want to talk about. Jay, man, what is going on, my friend?
Well, I want to take this opportunity. First of all, Ryan, you run a great show. My hats off to you. You're great. I want to talk about a guy you and I both like, and that's Chris Brooks. And I think there's something about him that people are missing. We know that he's a great blocker on the run game, which Grimes will value. We also know before he got hurt, even in first fall practice, that he's got great hands. He can high point the ball. He's a good size. He's not a burner, but he's a good size. And I know one of the things that we've mourned in losing Kozo was his red zone prowess. And I think Chris Brooks can be a red zone weapon. And I think he'll fill that gap. And I think that's a part of him that we're undervaluing. And I'm hoping and looking forward to seeing that aspect of his game.
Justin, thoughts on Brooks, red zone guy?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest beneficiaries of Grimes coming in as the offensive coordinator is a guy like Chris Brooks, who gets an opportunity, because I think you can look at the depth chart that was there previously, and I think it's just flushed down the toilet. I think that he honestly, the receiver room, other than Vinny, I don't think there's a guy who was locked into having a starting role, which gives Brooks an opportunity. And I will say at the spring game, he played a lot. He is going to be used this year. To what degree will be very interesting. I do think that Ballard as a receiver has more upside, but there are things that Chris Brooks does at a high level that I don't think you can rely on Ballard to do. And one of them is being kind of more versatile in the fact that he is capable of being a very good blocker and still being capable as a receiver to do some things.
Yeah, I think Koziel leaving, to Jay's point, opens up more of that door for Chris Brooks to be, because Koziel gave you some of both. He gave you the ability to block red zone and catch the ball with some size. Brooks gives you a little bit of that as well. Also, his pedigree, his dad was a baller at Nebraska. I think got a cup of coffee in the NFL. So I like Chris Brooks a lot, man. I'm right there with you, Jay. What's your optimism level on this Badgers team right now? Are you feeling 8 wins? Are you feeling 6 wins? Where are you at?
My optimism on the team is high. My prediction on record is so dependent on their tough schedule. It's so hard, it's so hard to say. I do think they'll be in every game. I do think that. And also about Brooks, that block he made on that long run by Jones last year, a great block. I really think he's going to, as you've both said, he's going to fit Grimes' game really well. And on the team as a whole, well, I'm a fan. I'm optimistic until proven otherwise. And I think, will we have a left tackle? Will our D-line make it possible for our linebackers to really wreak havoc? All those things, I think, are still to be determined and will go a long way to speaking to our record.
Man, I love it. Jay, thanks for dialing in. We got to take a quick break. On the way back, we're going to get Jacob on the show. Jay, man, dial in anytime we do these shows, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
A quick second for friends of the show. Jacob's in the queue again. If you want to jump in the show, let us know. Or just jump in. The link is in the chat. I'll put it back in there. Definitely jump in if you want to talk a little bit. Jacob, you're coming up next after the break. First, let's take a quick second for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, to say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers, being part of this community. Y'all are amazing. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. Monarch Money is absolutely incredible. They are here to get basically a personal CFO, someone who can look at everything you're doing with your money, everything that you got going on, bring it into one spot and make it a little easier, a little nicer. And I apologize as I'm finding the media thing here. I missed it. There it is. Oh, no, it's hidden under a banner. What is this, amateur hour? There it is. But what's not amateur is Monarch Money. Again, they help me and my wife. We have an account here. We use this to figure out where we spend a little too much money, where we waste a little too much money. And it's more me, like shocking. I'm the spender. And this has helped us figure that out. It's helped us plan goals and budget and do it all effectively, visually, and efficiently. Head over to monarchmoney.com right now. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, save 50% off your first year. Again, they're going to save you money the first time. Monarch Money, go over there. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. You will not regret it. Okay, let's jump back into this, Justin. We got Jacob coming out of this, and let's see where Jacob's at. Jacob, what is up, my friend?
What's up?
Where's your optimism level right now for this team?
Man, I think we'll be better. Definitely think we'll be better. Run game will be better. That's for sure. But I would say 6-6 with this record. But I do want to point out, I think everyone is overrating Ohio State. You know, last year Michigan came off that national championship. They lost a lot of players, same as Ohio State. Even those top programs, they struggle to replace that kind of talent. So I think Ohio State, especially if they're ranked, will be a huge win if we can get that, because I think they're overrated right now.
I think that's interesting, because what I will say is I think Sane may end up being a better quarterback than Howard, but I don't disagree with you that defensively they lost a lot, and I'm very curious with a new defensive coordinator how that comes together, because we've seen there's been some years that Ohio State's been vulnerable on defense, and that's why they kind of seem to kept, shuffling through defensive coordinators for a bit there. So it'll be really interesting to see if they just have to outscore people, or if they're going to be able to actually shut some people down this year.
Yeah, and Grimes' system perfectly attacks them, because, you want to bash them in the run when they have no D linemen.
So the problem, though, with Ohio State, and I hear you, they did lose a ton, Jacob. They also have a $40 million roster.
Yeah.
And they're one of, I think, 3 Big Ten teams, 2 or 3 that have a $40 million roster. It's Ohio State, it's Oregon, and I think USC is right behind them. And we played 2 of those teams this year. We played the top 2 this year. They still have Jeremiah Smith. They still have Caleb Downs. I hear you. I think they're worse. I don't think they reset. Yeah. I don't think they replaced everything they lost, but the margin was so big that I don't think they need to come into Madison and beat us, unfortunately.
I don't disagree with him that defensive line is a question mark for them, though, because they did lose a lot of guys with a ton of reps.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're looking at some guys that have a lot of talent that are maybe inexperienced, that who knows what they're going to be. I think they potentially may slip a little bit on defense. I still think they're going to be really good, but they may be more gettable, and that might give them some games that they're closer than they're expecting to have. I don't like, there are people out there looking at them as potential repeat team. I don't see that.
Let me
I just think there's too much inexperience on the team.
This is from Ryan Willie. Ryan, what if Wisconsin goes 3-9 or 4-8? Does Fickell deserve a 4th season?
Deserve or going to get are 2 different things.
I think he used deserve, because I think the buyout plays into this. But if he goes 3-9 or 4-8, does Fickell deserve a 4th season?
I don't think he does.
Okay.
Because I think if you did this right and the offense actually is functional and the defensive line is better at all, you should, even with this schedule, should be better than 3-9 or 4-8. That means that every game, even the ones that are against mediocre to bad teams, you still lost.
What do you think, Jacob?
I think it depends on how the 3-9, 4-8 goes down. Injuries, maybe a few teams are better than we think. Maybe Indiana, Fernando Mendoza, maybe he just turns out to be a stud. You can't predict everything. If we just get bashed, yeah, he shouldn't probably get another chance. But if we're given a fighting chance, or we have some injuries, give him another chance, especially because his first recruiting class wasn't really a true recruiting class. I wouldn't even count that as a first year even. I think you got to give him another shot.
How dare you bring context and subtlety into this conversation, Jacob? I agree. I actually mostly agree with that. I think it does depend a little bit on how it looks. Like if you lose a couple close games and maybe you have injury stuff, I don't know. It's hard for me to look at a 4-win team 3 years in, though, and say, yeah, you deserve another year at Wisconsin, considering what you took over. But I think it's I struggle with that one, man. I struggle with that one. I hear your context, though.
I honestly think there's too much talent on the roster for that to be, at this point. I really do think that the last couple classes they've hit on, and there is the biggest thing that I will say is when Ryan and I were watching the spring game, there was more players that popped in that spring game than probably all of the practice footage I saw from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of young guys that have a ton of raw talent and physical ability that we just haven't had a lot of. And
we didn't even see Dupree or Tretch.
No, it's true. You run the risk of running into the same fallacy. Fallacy is maybe the wrong word, but the same issue you ran into last year, though, judging your spring practice based on other players on your own team.
Yeah.
You do run into a little bit of that because last year's spring, I think this one looked better, but we were talking about, look at John Pius, and he's giving them some issues on the edge, and Tyree Walker doesn't look good. I'm just saying.
But one pushback I will say is we didn't see anybody that looked like Clayton.
We didn't.
There was nobody that looked like that coming off the edge.
Well, Clayton's different, but if you go back and read last year's practice reports after spring, I'm telling you, people were pretty optimistic. And it turned out that maybe some of that optimism was misplaced, clearly.
Yeah, but when you and I sat down, when we were down in fall camp at what do you call it? We sat and watched
in Platteville.
Yeah, Platteville. I didn't see anyone that I was looking at from those edge guys that I was like, this guy's just can't be blocked. I saw guys working, but I didn't see anybody like Clayton. Legitimately, when we were watching him, I'm like, people are struggling to stay in front of him. Like he's too quick on the edge to stay in. Like, and it was one of the things I pointed out to you when we were watching his high school film. I'm like, most of these tackles never get a hand on him. He jab steps to the outside, they overcorrect, and he just cuts right underneath, or he just goes right around him. I'm like, that is something that we had in some of the other guys that we had here that were really high. Herbig was one of those guys where he would just be too quick for a tackle to be able to get hands on. And we haven't had a lot of that recently.
Yeah, Clayton was lined up against Malman one of those snaps, and I was like, there's no way he's beating Malman, and he just flew right past him.
He's got an NFL skill set. He's got a lot of work to do to get to that point, but he's got NFL traits.
That speed plays.
Yeah, that speed plays for sure. Jake, I'm going to get you out on this. What's your record prediction this year?
I think 6-6. It's just such a tough schedule.
Yeah. Is 6-6 make you feel good? Assuming, again, there's context here, but does that you feel good about that considering if we play well in some of those losses?
Yes, I think 6-6 is a great record, and it builds towards something great next year, hopefully.
I love it, man. Dude, thank you for calling in. Do it anytime.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. Let's get the always professional Jackson Johnson joining the show. What's up, my guy? How are you down south?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How you doing today, Ryan? And how you doing today, Justin? Good to see y'all.
Doing all right.
I love that accent.
Oh, man, I'm just counting down, and I see that it's, 89 days till kickoff for week 0. Yep, 89 days till week 0, 94 days till week 1, 95 days till Auburn, Colorado, Auburn, Baylor, Colorado, Georgia Tech, 96 days until week 1 Saturday. That's when we see the Crimson Tide play against Florida State, and I believe we see the Wisconsin Badgers before Saturday, but I'm excited.
Thursday, I think.
Yep. Dude, we're getting close. Yeah. I mean, it's a long.
They're pushing us forward. Wisconsin's just going to end up playing sometime in early August at this point.
Dude, we're getting closer though. We're under 100. There's nothing like spring and summer. Like summer in Wisconsin is absolutely incredible. People are on the lake and it's nice out, but man, I miss college football. I miss college football Saturdays, dude. I can't wait. I'll give you a quick story. My wife was like, "Hey, my friend's having a wedding in Texas. Can we go?" I'm like, "What month?" She's like, "October." I'm like, "Nope."
Who's having a wedding in October? My God.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Tell her to go ask that question in the South. I can guarantee you the response is going to be.
Jackson, let me ask you this, man, because you might have a more nuanced take on this than a lot of people. I'm obviously with the hat on, the Southern expertise there. Wisconsin goes to Bryant-Denny this year.
Mm-hmm.
Should Badger fans go on that road trip?
They want to, yeah. I mean, it'll be the first ever road trip to Tuscaloosa in the history of Alabama, Wisconsin. Because, like, the first time it was played, it was a year before the Great Depression started, as I told Justin on Friday. The year before Black Tuesday happened, 1928, everything was in black and white. Everybody really walked fast for some reason. Second time was in 2015, Arlington, Texas. The third time was in Madison, Wisconsin, where it looked really close, but then injury bug happened to Wisconsin's quarterback, and it was a dominating victory. The score looked like a butt whipping, right? But believe me, it was not a butt whipping in the first quarter.
I think my perspective on this, and I actually thought about it, and we talked about it a little bit when we were trying to decide if we should ever make a away game trip, because I think that this is a game we may not see again in our lifetime, and that's in a way that's sad.
Come on over, Tuscaloosa. We'll take it to Baumhauer's and Dreamland.
I think because Bama fans, and I don't mean this as a slight to Wisconsin. I'm a Wisconsin fan, but Bama fans aren't going to look at Wisconsin as a major threat. They're just not. I think that we will get treated very well.
I think it would depend on if Wisconsin was in a better situation, but yeah, with the last couple of years, there's no reason for them to take a
kind of in general, right? I'm just saying. I think Wisconsin fans coming down pregame will get treated incredibly well based on what I've heard of Alabama fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm glad that we got to have this home and home. Like, I think it's pretty cool seeing Alabama, Wisconsin. And I'm curious to see how the rest of the year is going to turn out for the Badgers. And I'm really hoping they're not too hard on Luke Fickell. I think he's one of those guys that if you give him more time, he will be able to cook what Wisconsin needs. He'll be able to get things rocking and rolling. Because, I mean, it's like if Frank Beamer was coaching in this era today,
he'd have been long gone.
Fired. Coach K at Duke basketball, he'd have got fired. So it's like Luke Fickell's a guy that needs plenty of time. And I think once you see Luke Fickell winning, I think people are going to forget that they were even mad at Luke Fickell to begin with.
I hope so, man. Jackson, I got to let you go because I got to take a quick break, but always appreciate talking to you and having you jump on, my friend. Do it anytime. And I would love to talk more, especially with this Bama-Wisconsin thing coming up. That'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Good, buddy.
Later, buddy.
Later, Jackson.
We got to take a quick break. I do want to hit two really quick people. This is first one here is from Mitch Ames, Ryan in Primetime. I love it. Mitch is my guy. He's awesome. And then the other one here, Brian Schultz, first time on YouTube. Thanks for not doing a midnight show. Brian, man, welcome to the chat.
He made a comment that Casa Bonita is overrated. I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I was in Denver, so I had to go there with my son.
Dude, I love it. Let's take a quick break here. We're going to come back. I got a few more questions for Justin here that I think are going to be interesting. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And as always, a quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers, making this just one of your first stops every day. Really do appreciate it. Justin, let me hit you with this question. So we previously, I talked about in our Discord, what are some island takes that you have? A take where you're kind of on an island and all the other Badger fans are somewhere else. This one from Riley Z is interesting to me. I'm going to have to go with Grimes won't be the home run hire everyone is expecting. Does he raise the floor? Yes, but he is a low ceiling hire. Thoughts on this? Because I actually think there's some validity here with Riley. I don't think he is necessarily a home run hire.
I'm going to disagree with you on this because I feel like there's pedigree there. I think you can look at his bad season at Baylor and there is reasonable reasons as to why that season took place. But the guy's been on the Broyles list, like a finalist in 2 of the last 7 years, something like that. He's had
not the most recent 2 though. Fair to point out. Not the most recent 2 years, fair to point out.
That's fair. I do think that if you look at him consistently in his career, he's effectively 30 points per game at least. He even in his bad year, like last year at Kansas, bad quarterback play, still had 30 points per game or 29.7 or whatever it was, but it was right around the norm. He has a very high floor. I do think the ceiling is there if you give him the pieces. He's a guy who likes to be creative with what he's got. And if you have the talent, he'll dial some stuff up. But you have to actually have the pieces to do it. We'll find out if Wisconsin does or doesn't. I think he'll be very comfortable with the run game. I think the passing game we'll see. Ballard turns out to be a good player, then things get really interesting offensively. Because I think Vinny – the one thing I will say, when I saw Vinny in the spring practice, he looks like a pro. Like the route he runs, the way he gets open, like there's nobody that looks like they can cover him. And I think that's the way it's going to be against almost everybody. And I think there's even going to be some good corners that he cooks at times. It doesn't mean he's going to do it all game long, but I think there's going to be times he's going to find himself some openings. It's going to be up to Edwards to be able to put the ball on him when he does.
Yeah, I agree with you on Vinny. I think he is a pro. He looks like a pro because he is a pro. He's a pro in the same vein that Jared Aberderis was.
Yeah.
I think he's
just more polished than the guys that are across from him.
He's a little faster than JA. Probably not quite the route runner, but he's like a 4th, 5th, 3rd, 6th round pick type guy. He's a pro. Vinny's absolutely receiver 1. He's a pro. On Grimes, I remember when he got hired, I went and looked at the Kansas reaction, the Kansas board. They are not that high on Grimes, and that's his last stop. I'm just throwing it out there for context.
I will push back on that to the extent of this. The press that were associated with him said that they felt like that was BS and that he shouldn't be the one that was taking the punishment for it. To me, having watched most of their games, the issue was Jalen Daniels, and that was a guy coming back off of basically sitting out the entire season before that came back in and looked like a guy who hadn't played the year before. Like bad decisions. Like there were times we talk about that pick that locked through when we were at the Penn State game where I sat there and I said, don't throw it. When I watched the Illinois game for Kansas, he threw 3 balls that I legitimately was like, what are you looking at? Who are you throwing that ball to that were just awful reads? So some of it I can understand where if you're a fan who doesn't really want to take a look and deep dive and see what the problem was on a given play, I get it. There were people who would say that he would run the ball too much, and I will push back on that and say I don't think he had a ton of confidence in Daniels being able to make the right reads, which made him a little bit more conservative than he wanted to be. Because at the end of the season, when he got rolling, they started scoring at will.
And that's possible. And again, I'm coming from a guy who I'm good with the Grimes hire at this point. I was skeptical first. I feel good about it now, having talked to people. I think it's good. It's a good hire. It is fair to point out his last 2 stops ended with him essentially being let go. I think it's fair to point out. Like whether it's Baylor and Kansas.
He wasn't let go at Kansas. They wanted him back.
Did they in that role?
Yeah. Yeah, he was going to be coming back. There was actually an interview with Leipold where he said that he was not expecting him to be gone.
So I feel like he was. I don't know. I feel like that's a nice way of. I don't know. Maybe we're splitting hairs on that a little bit.
That could be.
Either way, I think his last 2 stops were less than perfect. I do like the hire. I do agree with Riley that it may not be a home run hire. I think that's a fair way for me to maybe put it.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, if we look at it, I don't think that you can expect him to be lights out from day one. This might be a process, which I think would be with anybody that we bring in. I just don't. We're not going to get an A+, and even if we do, I don't know if they're going to be able to work with what we have on the offensive side of the ball and be able to turn that into like some kind of juggernaut.
Yeah. Bo Dragon, by the way, I'm so sick of hearing about the schedule. Bama plays a tough schedule every year. Also, he brings it up down here. Michigan plays Ohio State every year. They don't cry about it. All kind of the same vein of the question. I wanted to bring this up, though, because I was curious. I was actually going to talk about this with you another day, and I forgot about it. Should the schedule be such a crutch for us? Because we've talked a lot about, hey, 6-6 because the schedule's so hard, 7-5. Do we feel good about that?
Have you looked at the other big teams in the conference, their schedules? Because I've looked through most of them, and I will say compared to most, I'll put it this way: if we weren't playing Bama as an out of conference, I don't think it's terrible. So we did that to ourselves, which is fair. But I also think that the Big Ten knew coming into this when they were setting up schedules, especially when you see some of the cupcake schedules that are out there for some of the teams in the conference, you could easily said, Wisconsin's already got Bama. Let's even this out a little bit, because it almost feels like they're just like, well, we need teams. These teams need another team on their schedule, so just chuck Wisconsin in. And that's kind of what it feels like. When you get 8 of the top 10 teams in the conference on your schedule, that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, we certainly didn't get any breaks from the conference, either in terms of games that you have to play or the sequence of the games where
UCLA. We didn't get Purdue do we have Purdue this year? No, we
don't have Purdue.
Yeah, no, we don't have Purdue. We don't have
even the mid teams. Like we have Indiana, who could be okay. It'd probably be good. Illinois, who could be one of the better teams in the conference. We have Iowa still, obviously.
Being talked about as a dark horse playoff team.
Yeah, we have Washington. By the way, Washington's not going to be a pushover this year. Now we
No.
get them in Camp Randall,
I
but
think that's what the issue is no Wisconsin didn't get any pushover teams really. I think realistically, if you're looking at it, and maybe people will say, well, because the Tennessee quarterback went to UCLA, suddenly they're much better. But I would gladly take UCLA, Michigan State, and Purdue over Iowa, Michigan, and choose a third team. Like that would substantially alter the strength of schedule for Wisconsin. I would probably be like, I can live with Ohio State and Oregon at that point, and Alabama.
the other thing I'll say on this, and Evan says, I think the schedule's overhyped. The other thing I would say on this is we just also have to be realistic with where we're at. You know, this isn't the last couple years haven't been a great version of the Badgers. So
yeah, if we're a good team, we would probably gut it out and we'd probably be saying this is an 8-4 or 9-3 season.
But we haven't been like, so yes, the schedule is a bit of a crutch, it's a bit of an excuse, but it's also a realistic look at where this program's been the last couple of years. And when you line that up with a tough schedule, then you start getting back to, hey, this program's to walk before it runs now. And walking is getting to 6-6, 7-5.
You need to be able to build confidence. And this is a crap schedule for trying to build confidence.
I agree. Will says, I think the key game this season will be Iowa. Will's my guy. Will's great. What's the key game this season for you? This is a fascinating question.
I think that's the one. I think if there's two ways to look at this. I look at Iowa as the linchpin of can Wisconsin be bowl eligible and have a solid season? And I think Michigan is where is your ceiling? Where is your ceiling game? Because if they beat Michigan, now you maybe have an outside chance of upsetting somebody that you shouldn't. And you can take a look at it and be like, well, maybe we will trip somebody up coming up here. But I think that Iowa is probably the one you look at and say they need to beat Iowa in order to be a 6-6 team.
Yeah. I think Iowa's a really good answer for this. I want to pivot just because I don't want to say the same thing. I think a sneaky, really important game, Justin, is that Maryland game because it comes right before that 4-game stretch. You get a bye after it. So the nice thing I like about the schedule, it's almost broken into 3 segments. You have 4 games bye, 4 games bye, and then the rest of your schedule. We think we're going to go 3-1 in that first stretch with a loss to Bama. That's how it should work if you beat Maryland. But what if you lay an egg? Wisconsin should beat Maryland, by the way. But what if they lay an egg? Then you go into a bye, and then you have those 4 rough games. Boy, you got to beat Maryland.
I just look at it, and Maryland was so bad last year, and the fact that I don't know what they would have done to actually fix that offensive line. That I don't know. You took their starting quarterback, who was one of the one bright spots on that team.
Him and the receiver, Felton.
Yeah.
Who's also gone.
So what's left? Like,
I hear you.
They gotta their schedule is not a terrible one, but they could still lose probably almost every game on it because there's not a lot of talent on that team.
No, I hear you. Listen, Loxley has to do something there. I'm almost surprised he's still there, but
I have been for a while. He just doesn't feel like a guy who's got any type of legitimate ceiling, like upward mobility for that program.
Bo says, I don't even consider Maryland a football team. Bo has spoken. Aaron says Minnesota is the key game for me. Yeah, that's a really big one. That Washington game too, man. After that 4-game stretch, you go into a bye, then you get Washington, a Washington team that I think is going to be better this year.
How do you feel about the byes, by the way?
I think the byes are great.
See, I don't love how they're set up. If I was going to do it, I would say I would rather have us play our first bye after the Iowa game.
I like how the byes are set up. I think you get a break before your tough break or your tough 4-game stretch.
Then you get hit with a gauntlet 4
you
straight.
Do, but then you get a break right after that tough stretch. So I don't like the schedule or the sequencing. I think the byes are in the best spot they could be in. I really like where the byes are.
You wouldn't split it up in the middle?
I wouldn't. I like having a break after your 4-game stretch, and I like having a break after your first 4-game. But I hear you too. That middle stretch is brutal, man. That is a brutal schedule. And if we had a really good team, it'd be a brutal schedule. Let me give you, I could do this show with Justin all day long. I'm going to give you one more here from our kind of hot takes. I'm on an island type of a show. This one was from, please talk some sense into your boy Rajiv. I think people are wrong saying that Johnny Davis was elite. He was good, but he had tons of holes in his game and drove me nuts. Talk some sense into your boy Rajiv, please, Justin.
Well, you sent out your poll, and I inadvertently looked at it incorrectly. and said Tanjay because when I look at Tanjay, I look at it from the standpoint of who is a better fit for what we were trying to do, and his efficiency in terms of 5-on-5 basketball. I would take Tanjay. You had it presented as 1-on-1, and I said, "Oh yeah, Johnny Davis would kill him. Like it wouldn't be a game," and that has to do with the fact that athletically, he like in every conceivable way is a better athlete than Tanjay.
Yeah. By the way,
that's typically who wins when you play a game of 1-on-1.
By the way, I'm going to have Rajiv on. Like, this isn't fair for me to put this up without Rajiv here, obviously. But for him to say Johnny Davis was not elite,
in college, yeah. And Bo Dragon asked if he's talking elite in college. Yes, it was elite in college. It was not. He's not clearly not an NBA elite player. But yes.
Rajiv and I have to chop this up because it's not fair for me to talk about this. This wasn't the take I was going to bring to you. I just really quickly have to bring up that you got to talk some sense into your boy. This is the one I was going to bring up. This is from Packer Kid. Big Packer Kid. He said, Jail's defense has thrived in the weak Big Ten West and wouldn't be nearly as good in the new Big. So the hot take here is Jail was overrated because of the schedule.
I disagree with that. I think what I will say is this. The games we played better opponents, some of the cracks showed because of the fact that the offense was bad. And we saw that. Just to put this into perspective, the 2019 Ohio State team, which I think would have trounced every team we saw last year. I think they would have easily won the national title. We had 10 sacks against that team with Justin Fields, who was night and day better than Howard at quarterback. And that was a game where we held them down for 3 quarters, but could do absolutely nothing offensively. And because of that, you eventually saw the problems. Part of the issue is when you're a team, when you're somebody like Leonhard's defense, when your offense doesn't do you any favors, you're constantly playing a 50-50 game, which is the other team can run and pass because you're not getting any type of separation from them. He never really had an opportunity against a team like an Ohio State or Oregon or whoever, where we got out to a big lead and he had an opportunity to kind of dictate in those games because he couldn't play downhill because there's always a chance of getting caught because those teams weren't afraid of us offensively. Oregon and the Rose Bowl is a prime, like looking at that is a prime example of it.
I would say this too. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Like Jim Leonhard is, by the way, my opinion, was and is a great defensive coordinator who was also aided by a schedule at times that was pretty weak.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, there were a lot of teams that played in the Big Ten West, and not many of them were putting up the type of defensive metrics that Wisconsin and Jim Leonhard were doing. So you have to give him credit for what he did because the backbone of those teams in that era that were incredibly successful, that went to the Orange Bowl, that almost went to the Big Ten, that almost won the Big Ten, the backbone of those teams was the defense and running game, Justin. And that was Jim Leonhard and the running game, period.
Well, that's just it. Like Wisconsin had a chance to elevate itself, and offensively, we just stunk. Like in all honesty, we were super conservative, and Leonhard carried us. Like if we were average defensively, we would have fallen off much earlier. Like we were a dominant defense with a very mediocre offense. Yeah, and he was the architect of that defense. I don't think he was overrated. I really don't. I think the schedule helped him, obviously. But let's put it this way: when he left Wisconsin, realistically, if he wasn't tied to a location, he could have taken a job anywhere in the country. And I'm talking blue bloods. Everybody would have taken him as the defensive coordinator. He probably could have gotten himself $2.5 million to go somewhere.
I agree.
He didn't want to do that.
I agree. Brian says Davis is better than Tanjay. Like I said, Brian's a great dude. A smart guy. Evan says Johnny was good, always out of control. To be honest, I thought Ivy deserved the Big Ten Player of the Year that year. Matthew says Tanjay better than Davis. Jim Mandel says need to work into second team players for meaningful snaps to reduce wear and tear of a long season. Love that. A couple other questions here and thoughts. I think that kind of wraps that up. Justin, anything else that we're missing? Mark Benson, I don't even know what point you were making there, but Mark Benson said absolutely, Justin. Crushed it.
So I'm going to throw this one out here from Bo Dragon from earlier. He was saying that the D-line will get beat up early and crumble as the season progresses, leading to a horrific 4-8 season. I don't see that happening this year. And the reason I don't see that happening is I do think they legitimately are probably 6 or 7 deep on the defensive line. This is not a defensive line where if one guy goes out, you're going to suddenly fall apart. Like it might tie your hands a little bit in terms of some of the things you want to do, but there's enough depth there that they'll be able to get by if one guy goes down.
I agree with that. I think the depth is much better. Listen, the trenches you got to be worried about is the offensive line.
Yeah.
That tough stretch. If you lose, let me ask you this.
There's some bodies there that if they lose 1 or 2 guys, you're going in with some really inexperienced kids.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you. Let's say, God forbid, Molman goes down, or Brunner, who you kicked up, maybe the guy you're kicking to the left tackle goes down. Who's your next tackle up?
I mean, you've got to put Heinzen in at probably right tackle, right?
Probably. And I'm telling you right now, like that,
it's either that or Nolan Davenport, who's played second string, but I don't think they're comfortable putting him out there in Big Ten play. Not at this point. Like that's a guy you want to get a year of reps. And it's no shade on him as a player. I just don't like. Haywood was well ahead of the curve, and I didn't want him out there as a true freshman last year because experience plays a massive part in those guys, and some of it's just technique. Like we've talked about it before, where I said athleticism gives you room for error that you don't have if you don't have it. It's one of the things that I think our offensive linemen in the past it was a weakness, and that's why we've been so high on guys like Haywood and Mandel and Corey.
Yeah, and Davenport as well.
Yeah, they can grit their way through things because athletically they're more impressive players than some of the other guys who had to rely on technique. When you bring out a true freshman to play, they don't have they're not ready to go on either of those things because they're still developing enough strength. Like they may have been dominant physically at the high school level. You play grown man strength when you're playing in the Big Ten against defensive guys. And you're going to have guys who their bodies are just 2 or 3 years into development. And you have a guy who's taken 1 off season's worth of, strength building. And that's a lot to ask for that kid.
Yeah, it's not fair, which is why I think you kick Mandel out. If you get to that disastrous,
probably there's a chance that he would be the guy that they would slide out. And I'll be very curious if they move Brunner, if he's going to be a starter inside.
Yeah, I think you'd slide him out if you had to. Guys, we're going to wrap it up there again. And really do appreciate it. We're going to be trying to do one of these call-in shows once a week, kind of community call-in shows. So if you want to call in, you didn't get a chance today, it's as simple as just clicking on the link, letting us, and you just jump in. It's as simple as that, quite frankly. Justin, thank you for tuning in. Go find him and Rajiv over at the Bucky Report. Obviously, great work that they do all the time. Go check them out as well. On Wisconsin, thank you for doing this community show with us. And if you missed the call-in this week, call in next week. We're going to wrap it there. Hope everyone had an incredible Memorial Day weekend.
On the way out, Bo Dragon, Chris is not in the Texas payroll anymore.
Oh, really quick. Also on the way out, my guy Aaron Tanjay, I will take 1,000 times over Davis. You guys are killing me. Aaron, I love you, brother. Maybe I'm crazy on it. I don't know. We're gonna wrap it there. On Wisconsin, we'll definitely talk to y'all later.